Hello, this is Max Drake. I did this previous video on an expense app where I've got an expense. You can put an expense in and you can submit the expense, and then you can view the expenses for a particular month that you can choose through here. Well, there's nothing for 3, so let's just go to 6 view expenses. And then I've hidden away a whole load of extra functions down where if you've got something that is incorrect, so if we go to 7, and view expenses through there, we can actually come down through this expander thing and delete depending on the code, and we can add extra different payees and add the payees, and we can have a list of the payees through there. That tends to fold on that first one, and then you can get a list of ID categories and a list of accounts and things like that. So within the app itself you can do a whole lot of changing, and then the last thing that you can do is you can export set your expenses to CSV. Now the back end of this is an SQLite database, so that's actually a small little file that is in the same folder as where the files are. So that's what I did on the last one. So in this one here, I thought about deploying it to Streamlit thing. So you can deploy it to the cloud, and they've got one here. So if you just watch this quick video through here, if we start at the very beginning, get up there and start at the beginning. You start in the app, you need to have a GitHub repository, and you get the URL for that, and then you say which branch you want and then what file you're actually going to run for your app, and then it actually just goes up and runs it. So it's quite easy to do. So you can sign up for free, and it offers you to sign up with your GitHub account. Now, I signed up with my GitHub account because of the fact that I suddenly thought, oh, well, since I'm using my GitHub, I might as well just link across to that. So to deploy onto the cloud for free inside Streamlit, you also need a free GitHub account as well as setting that up to begin with. I think it's quite easy to set up the account, but actually doing the moving from your PC and getting the Git init and all of that sort of thing, and pushes and pulls can be a little bit confusing. I've had a Git account for a long while, but I haven't used it. I've got about 43 repositories, or 42, but I haven't used it in the last year or so. Very few. And all of mine have been public ones, so it's really just sharing apps that I've created and just putting them in a place where other people can actually just grab a copy of them if they want. In this scenario though, I'd actually got my VS Code through here, and I got the apps and the things that I actually wanted, and I thought, right, I'm going to push them across, get them into the Git, and I hadn't actually before used Git ignore. And I thought, I want to play with that. So when I did Git ignore, initially I suddenly thought, well, this is a public repository, suppository or whatever, and so I didn't want to give it my .env file, which actually had all of the my password for me logging in for my this particular email account. When I did the Git ignore to begin with, there's also this, whenever I run it on VS Code, it does this temp code runner file, which don't know what it's got in there, but anyway, I didn't want that one going across because it's not really, it's just something that VS Code wants to do. In the Git ignore, initially I actually had that, and in the end, I suddenly thought, well, to run this app, I actually want to do the second part. I do need the passwords and all of the email accounts so that I can send the email across. So in the end, I kind of took out the .env so that I could get my .env file across into my account. But I then had to make it a private account. Now, in the old days when I first set up my GitHub account, you were only allowed public accounts. But now, I think since about 2020 or something like that, you can now have private accounts for free. So I suddenly thought, well, okay then, if I make this a private account, I can actually bring my .env file across there, and then nobody else can see it. But then I can pull that up onto the Streamlit app so that it's usable from that point of view. So that's one thing. It took me a lot of, I ended up spending a lot of time just fiddling around with that. The other key thing that you need is a requirements.txt. So if we just look at the requirements.txt, it's actually just a whole list of the packages or modules that you're using and the ones that it needs to load up when you're doing it. So in the when we're running this app C2, I'm using Streamlit and I've got Streamlit options menu 1 through here. I'm also using SQLite 3, but it apparently didn't need SQLite P. It did need me to load pandas, and for the sub-process and systems and OS, and also datetime, I think, they're part of the Python package anyway. So before they used to be different standalone modules, but they've now been integrated into Python itself because they're used all the time, especially things like OS. So when you do this, you need to make yourself a requirements file. So when you load it up and when it comes up to Streamlit, it knows what packages it needs to load up. So it says, oh, I need a pandas 1.51, I need a Streamlit 1.24, and I need a Streamlit option 0.36. And then you say, well, where the heck do you get those from? So there's a couple of things that you can do. So I'm just going to quit out of this, Control Cancel. And the first thing that you can do, and I'm just going to make a silly name for this, so let me just get that one there and go delete, yeah. So what you can do is you can go pip freeze and then forward chevron, chevron, and then go give it a file name. So I'm just going to go rec.txt. Now the requirements text seems to be the standard text that you have. So it's done that now, so I just refresh that, and there's my request. Now what you see through here is all of the packages and modules that I actually have loaded on my computer at the moment. Now of course I don't need all of those packages to run this particular script. All I need is these particular ones through here. So I can go through those and see which ones I need. So I need the Streamlit one, so I can go into that requat test and I can go, where's S for Streamlit? ST. So I can actually grab those two there and get them and put them into the requirements.txt and add them. We've already got them there already. So you need that double equals, which actually said which version they are. So the importance with this is that you get the versions that you're actually running on your PC so that you know that they all talk to each other. If you end up getting another one, like an earlier version on this, it might break because it's got the wrong version of the things, the stuff. So that's what's a handy thing to actually just get your requirements text. So on my requirements text, it needed all of these, and the other one that I needed on these ones here was this .env. So for that one there, if you look in requirements, no, let's go and look in rec.txt, and if we look for, what was that, .net. So if we look for .net, you'll see that there's no one there called .net. So there's the debug, DDD, and then it goes on to E. But the actual package is called Python. So where's Python? So I need the full Python, and there we are, .env. Sorry, it's a .env one. Now when I'm unsure with something like that, I actually just go onto the web, I go onto here, and I just go Python .env. And you know, because it's the package that I know it's going to do with, I know it's a Python package, so just putting Python kind of means that it's going to reduce the search like that. So when I've got that one there, you'll see it's kind of said python.net.env, and then it actually also gives whatever the version it is here. So this is the latest version, so that could be later than the one that I've got. In fact, so I know that I need to go and look for python-.env. So when I actually go back to my rec one through here, I can now look at Python and I can see I've got .env equal to 1. So I can now copy that and bash it into there. V, safe. It hasn't been updated on here, but it has been updated on the other one. So when I take my files across, so you need to kind of build yourself a requirements text of the ones that you need. Now, if you haven't got the right libraries in here, when you actually upload it into, when you deploy it to Streamlit, it will give an error, and then it'll kind of say, oh, line 30 I haven't got, or line 5 I haven't got this library, or sorry, this package or this thebob. So you just go and add it to the requirements.txt. So you can actually just jump into your ones in here and suddenly saying, oh, I need another one, and that's the one that I actually need through there, as it is, I've got it. So you can actually just go into your commit the changes and commit changes, and you can go into your repository and actually just change it there. But just be careful, if you've got different files, one could overwrite the other, although it tends to stop. and so you might have to do a pull before you do a push or something like that, which I've had to do a couple of times on here. So once you've got your things in here, the other thing that I also do is that my filthy habit is that a lot of the times I'm using a longer path because of the fact that I like working inside my Python. So I open my VS Code in Python directory, and then I go and click into a subdirectory where I'm actually running something. So that allows me to leap out and go and grab a snippet or something from another code or another file from another project that I'm working on through there. So that means I end up having to do this extra long path, so I find I've actually got to change the path, just put double quotes, which means it's empty, there's no path, so all the files are in the same directory where I need to do. So that's just my personal way of doing it, but so just be aware there's that sort of slight messiness that I have in my coding. Bad boy. So once you've actually got your git commit, so you've got your requirements text which says all of the libraries that it needs to upload, and you've got your files that you need. It might ask you to do a readme file, just as an explanation of what is in this repository overall. And then usually you've got to come in here, and when you're linking to the Streamlit, it asks you for this URL through here, and then it asks which git commit path or whatever. I always just put master, and I get the master one because I don't tend to do the other ones that way. And then you just go into, if we're just inside here and we come to the very beginning, you go new app, you give it the repository through there, you give it the branch which is master, and then you give it the file that you actually want. And then the other thing that it asks you for is it says what you want to call the domain of your app. Now I actually just type expense-app, and it says, yeah, well, that one's for free, so that one's free, so you can have it. But you've got to have everything in lowercase, and the only symbol that you can use is the minus or the dash sign. It doesn't like the underscore through there. And then this is the domain that it's going to add on to the end. Now, I'm in here and I can use this at this point in time, but if I go and exit out, you see I can't use the app now. You do not have access to this app, or it does not exist. Please sign in to continue. Now when I went in and signed up for Streamlit, I just signed up and I just used my GitHub account because the two they're both associated with each other in a way. But if you want to share it with somebody else, it might be wise to make a different password. So it's one that you can share, so you can give them an email and a password to the same account. Then you can have other people share it, so just be aware of that. So it won't let me do it, so I've actually got to sign in with GitHub. So I'm just going to sign in with GitHub, then it allows me to use the app. So that's just another thing to be aware of, is that you've got to be signed in to be able to run that app. If you're not signed in, it ain't going to work. So the actual deployment is quite easy. It breaks if you haven't got the right requirements loaded up, so you just have to go around and chase for those sorts of things and get them, and then you're right, and then it's up and running. The second thing, when I actually, because it was linking to my GitHub account, I was a little bit worried that it was actually, the Streamlit was just reading the GitHub account, so it was actually running from the GitHub account, but it isn't. It actually copies the files across to a Streamlit cloud, and then it puts it in a folder inside Streamlit somewhere, and it runs it from there. Now in that folder it actually has read and write requirements. So this was the next thing that worried me. When I've done my app, like part of my app, when it goes through, that's that one there, but when I'm doing it from here, one of the functions that I have right at the bottom is that I export expenses to CSV, and I say that, oh, if it's doing that on GitHub, I won't be able to write that file to the GitHub repository. So I thought, oh, I better test that out. So when I tested that out, and I come into the expense app Streamlit, and I come down and I do export expense files to CSV, it's writing that file somewhere, and then it's getting that file and attaching it and sending it to me by email. So I've got it sent to me by email there. So that's wonderful. So I was thinking it was a little bit more limited, but in fact it isn't, because it actually takes all of those files up. So if you want to update, if you're on your PC, you would update your files here, or if you updated your code, you would then do a push and update your GitHub, and then you'd actually have to go into your Streamlit app and then update your GitHub. It would then have to pull up that change again through there. So GitHub is the place of it. You can bring the changes from there and update your Streamlit app. So just be aware of that. So that's one part of the thing that I just wanted to talk about, and I thought it was quite smooth. Now, a couple of things. Setting up a Streamlit app, there's a lot of videos out there, and they talk about it, and there's also a lot of videos out there about setting up a GitHub account if you haven't done it. So setting up the whole thing, they'll go through all the steps through there. Sven, he talks through deploy your Streamlit app. Now, he deploys it to render. Now, he talks about deploying it to Streamlit, but he doesn't like, in his Streamlit app, he doesn't like this little manage down the side that gives you all this information of when it's uploading all of the packages that it needs to actually upload for that. And the other thing that it does is it seems to have a template already there, and the ones that it doesn't need, it uninstalls a whole load of PyTZ. So that's the one to do with the time zone and zip and a few other ones through here. So it uploads the latest ones that it needs, and then it looks and it says, oh look, I've got all of these other packages that I'm not using, let's get rid of them, so it speeds up the thing. So I think it's quite good as to what it's doing through there. But what he does with the Streamlit app through here is he talks about it, but he didn't like this element down in the bottom side through there. So he ended up using render. Now render is like Heroku. Now Heroku used to be free, and so I used to load a couple of apps up on there, but they've stopped making that a free account. So render is one that you can do, but it spins up your program. So it starts your program and it runs it, but it only runs it for 15 minutes, and then it stops it, and then the next time you log in or whatever, it'll start it again. So what happens is it's the same as coming into here and it's stopped the app, and so it's got to restart the app. Oh, sorry, there are we there. And now we're going to start. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's taken 5 or 6 seconds to actually load the app through there. So every time you're actually doing it on the render one, that's a different one. So if you're, I'll give the link to these ones because this is the way that Sven's done it, and I was sort of following along from Sven. And then this one's which is just purely deployed to Streamlit on the thing. So there's a few going through there. So the thing. So personally, I'm sort of comfortable with deploying things up to a Windows server that I've got. I'm not that good with Linux, but for people who are not that familiar with servers, this I find is a very simple way, doing it for free, of actually deploying your Streamlit framework with the code up to there. It's quite easy. It is a very easy deployment in my opinion, and it's for free, so that's quite good. But you do actually have to go through the process of setting up a GitHub account, making a repository, and then sending it, and then either making it public or private, and then linking all the way through as to what you're doing. So good from that point of view. The second little thing I want to talk about is the app itself. Now I'll go through, which one do I want? I want the localhost one through here, so Control Shift and C. When I've got this mobile app, when this morning I was tinkering around with it, I've got it, and it's sort of this sort of size, so it's a Galaxy Note or whatever. And what I found was this has ended up being double height, because the icon ended up going to the top, and then the text ended up going to the bottom. So it ended up being big, and also like my one is about that height. So I found that all of the features that I wanted to actually press the button, I've got to move my screen up to be able to, as I go through and do it. So it's not showing the whole thing on my screen. So I thought, I said, oh, is there a way of actually just reducing the height? So can I actually shrink vertically so that I could get that much onto the screen in the same point? You know, and I've got a 6-inch mobile phone, but I'm finding that these elements are quite big. And so I was a little bit frustrated with how much I could actually get on my screen. So Streamlit says it's responsive. But when I look at my Glide app, the Glide app was actually designed for a mobile. So it's actually designed to be adjusted, or a lot of the components tend to work very well on a mobile phone type thing. This one, it's got a lot of dead space up here, and I couldn't get rid of that. It's got dead space into here. It's got this double height through here. And then this big text box here, I tried making this one smaller. And I thought, it's because I've got 150 characters I want in here. Let's just put 15 characters in here. It's still, the element is the same size. So even on targeting each specific one, going in and finding the CSS for this particular thing, trying to adjust it to shrink it, a lot of those elements I couldn't do that sort of thing. So I found some of the things inside the Streamlit app quite frustrating. Now, at the end of the day, just scrolling up a bit, it just means aesthetically it's not as handy. But if it's quick, and for my testing so far, it's far quicker than my Glide app used to be. So if it's a lot quicker, then I'll end up using it. So that's just a slight inconvenience, and I'm not that bothered with it in a way. There was a couple of little refinements that I could do. One of them inside of here was, I suddenly thought I would take these symbols away, the icons away. And if I took the icons away, but when I took those icons away, it ended up with these icons anyway, so I ended up actually having to abbreviate the text. So on this one here, if I just go into the mobile and think, now I can keep all of that. But you see, even with making that only, just close out of here, that's a bit irritating. Even with this only being a single height, I still can't see the button on the thing. And if you see this 394 by 805, 394 by 805, that's double height, and I still can't see the stuff. So I'm a bit disappointed with the fact that I can't seem to do a lot. I spent a whole morning messing around with the CSS and all of that, and it just ended up making some of these scrunching up in these spaces and this button coming right up to the button. It just looked ugly. And so I kind of came to the conclusion that Streamlit is a good, easy way to set up, because it's got those components and you just bung them in. But actually adjusting things within the element itself can be quite frustrating. So as I said, I could target that one there, and that would give me some information. I could also target and this element at the top. Oh, sorry, let's just see if I can get that. It's got this header through there, so I thought, I can get rid of the header. But no, I can't. Even if you get rid of the header and you make the header 0, this still ends up taking up this amount of time. So I found the whole manipulation of some of the components not quite there. Now I think it will improve in the future. But just at this point in time, I did find it awkward. So I suddenly thought, well, I've got the choice of either using the Streamlit framework, or maybe I can use the Flask. And if I did it in Flask, I'd actually then I'd have a lot more control over the HTML on the page that you actually see. But if it was a Flask app, I wouldn't be able to deploy it to the Streamlit, because it's a Flask and they want to keep theirs separate because they're special. So you'd actually have to deploy your Streamlit app, your Flask app to render instead. So I don't know the complexity of that. I'm reasonably happy. I just wanted I wanted a Python app just to compare for speed. Streamlit was easy to build, and it's easy to deploy straight away. So although the aesthetics are not the best from the point of what it looks like on my mobile phone, if it's quick, that's fine for me. But I did find it a little bit challenging from that. So maybe if I do a similar sort of app, instead of choosing Streamlit next time, I might decide to go for something like Flask or maybe Pyramid, or try one of the other frameworks instead, to see whether it's a more mobile friendly sort of tool to use. But the nice thing with the Streamlit one is, for somebody who's not familiar with deploying apps and things like that, you know, the only challenging bit really for me was the GitHub, because I just haven't been using it for nice. But again, the nice thing with it, because it's on a remote server somewhere, so it's deployed onto the cloud in Streamlit. To get the downloaded file, I need to email it to myself. So to email it to myself, I need a password to be able to use an email account, such that I can attach it to that email account and then send it to another email. So I needed to have passwords on there. So actually I needed a private repository to be able to put in something where I can actually have my password. So all of the components are there for if you want to go privately for free. And the requirements file was another thing I played with before and got into trouble, and this time I hadn't got all of the requirements in there, and it broke, but then it came right as soon as I added the other one through there. So overall, I've enjoyed the project. I quite enjoyed doing the deployment. There was all these little things that I was worried about, but in fact, and I think the render one as well uses the same method of, it actually takes it from your GitHub. So it's worth getting the GitHub and doing the Streamlit app and posting it to Streamlit, and then also maybe look at hosting onto Render, especially if you maybe want to do a Streamlit app, or you may want to do a Flask app or some other Python framework that you may want to consider, or like Django or something. But Django seems to be very complicated for me. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that of interest. If you did, please give a thumbs up. Again, a bit slacky. It's more of an overview rather than going into the depths of all the things, but just the little trips that I had along the way is a sort of highlighting. I find a lot of the other people tend to kind of make it all look so easy, and yet when I go to do it, I find I can do all the mistakes along the way. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully that will avoid you from having those pitfalls. Thank you very much.